Am L-I-V here with livzenastrology, and this is day 8, 8 or 9. Gosh, I gotta keep track of cosmic conversation with livzenastrology. We're still in Gemini season right now, and we are having this conversation during Gemini season, talking about things that it seems like the collective energy is really experiencing right now. And so, how are you guys feeling today? How is this new moon flow in Gemini conjunct Mercury in Gemini? How is this affecting your mental processes, what you're thinking about, what you're talking about, what you're communicating, what you're learning? Excuse me, gosh, ever since I've been talking, beginning this series, I've had this cough, this like almost the stagnancy of my throat chakra that maybe wanted to be talked about for so long. It's finally emerging. So maybe you guys can put in the comments if you've been having any throat issues, um, you know, mucus, phlegm, think maybe stagnant energies that have been moving, that are just starting to move around since we're getting more of this clearing. We just had this trine energy with Pluto and the new moon, and again, Mercury ingressed into Gemini, and now the moon is ingressing into Cancer today. So it's all about the feels. It's about how are you feeling about everything that was spoken about. For a lot of us, with that trine with Pluto, it's about our power, speaking on having powerful, deep conversations. Pluto rules Scorpio. And so you might have found yourself over this last portal energy, I would say the last week or so, or strong, week, the last strong or so, um, really dynamic, catalytic conversations that are compelling you to maybe face some things within yourself that you weren't willing to look at, right? Some insecurities, feelings of anger, jealousy, resentment, anything to do with the lower nether realm of relationship dynamics that possibly all of us could be experiencing or have experienced. Or if you're human, you've been hurt, right? Most of us, if you've lived long enough on this planet, you've had a broken heart at some point. You've been in love, and you've been in different relationship dynamics, which again, Gemini season is all about the other. It's polarity. It's the energy of duality, right? The poles of existence are just the oppositions, but duality is where it almost seems like one is good, one is bad, one is right, one is wrong. And so as we are learning to transcend, I feel and believe and know these limiting beliefs about polarity and about these poles that exist within us, right? The right, the wrong, the good and bad, the projections that we may be seeing in our outer realms with the other, that are igniting us by what they're speaking about, right? I'm looking at 2 podcast topics. I know podcasts are going to be blowing up through the roof right now. You can look and see there's a lot of movement going on within the YouTube community and with the social network community. It seems like there's a lot more dialogue, and I feel like there always has been, but you can see waves of just like really hot topics right now. The healthcare system, there's a lot that's been going on with governmental systems and regulations. This is all big business, Capricorn, ruled by Saturn. We know Saturn just went to Aries, and so Aries is about the independent. It's about being sovereign. It's being first Aries, right? The warrior. And so as we're starting to see people, the structures, the top-down structures are falling away, and the time of sovereignty, of independence, Aries, is being shown really strong, right? People are having independent thoughts, independent voices. Finally, their voices are coming to the forefront. We're starting to be heard. We're starting to hear ourselves speak about these things we're seeing outside of us in a different way, right? A new way. This is Pluto. Something's got to transform within the group consciousness, the collective hive mind, if you will, which is part of this. If you tune into the energy of Aquarius and the higher mind of Uranus, which to me is like extraterrestrial, right? It's other Earth, it's things that are beyond what we can perceive in the material realm. This is the realms of Neptune and Uranus, and even Pluto, right? Because it's the farther reaching planet. And there's still controversy about whether even Pluto's a planet or not, which is very interesting. It's considered a dwarf planet now because of its size, right? So, but there's still potency in that. I think of like the atom or the cell. There's got a lot of potency in things that are small. So it doesn't necessarily mean things are bigger that are right, but Pluto is our powerhouse, right? It's some astrologers and when I've tuned into the energy of Pluto, it's like where the soul goes when it exits this incarnation and comes back to repeat or recycle, right? It's almost like a, I think of like a Fibonacci spiral, or the eight, right? That was coming in the infinity when I was meditating. And so yeah, this is like a channeled expression today, because again, the moon just ingressed into Cancer, so I'm having a lot of feels today. I'll tell you how I woke up today. I'm actually kind of tired, kind of dragging butt a little bit, because I was woken up early. If you can see outside there, there's a beautiful green evergreen tree, Christmas tree out right side of the window, and there's a couple of bird nests that are out there. One is now no longer occupied, but there's another one that has four little birdies. They look like little finches, right? And I've seen them since they were in their, they look like they're almost firstborn. And so they've been out there for a few weeks now, and I find myself protective of these little birdies, right? So upon the grand rising today, it was even before the sun was rising, the mother finch bird out there she was kind of going nuts, because I could see movement in the tree where normally it's pretty peaceful. When I looked out the window and saw what was going on, I saw that there was like some sort of animal. It looked like a chipmunk or kind of a squirrel, but it didn't have a tail. Anyway, I didn't even know. I didn't even look it up yet, whether or not it's carnivorous or would eat birds. I don't know. It might just eat nuts, and it was looking for a nut. But immediately I got into this protective mode, right? This Cancer moon. I was like, no, no, you're not going to eat those birdies. You're not going to eat those babies. So I ran outside, right, barefoot in the rain. What was interesting is when I went out there to make sure, and I kind of was like clapping my hands, like, get out of there, whatever's in there, just take off. And I noticed, because of the rain, the evergreen tree had almost like the branch had lowered to where you couldn't even see the nest of the birdies. And so the evergreen tree was like protecting the birds as well, right? And so I just felt the clarion call. And so how is this relevant for what we're talking about in Gemini season and the energy? It's because a lot of us maybe feel, especially after we just got exposed and just spoke about a lot of things that were probably vulnerable in people we care about and things that we care about. And so now this Cancer nurturing is like wants to protect, you know, I'm hearing fragile psyches, right? Those little baby birds, they're just so fragile. They're so vulnerable, right? And so with Cancer now, the moon, which rules the moon, right? So it's at home in the moon phase, and the moon we know controls tides and emotions. In astrology, it is our emotional body. And so we might have just gotten really vulnerable with our words, with our expressions, right? Showing up and maybe having a new voice about things, speaking on things that otherwise we would not have spoken about, things of power dynamics, Pluto, things that are going on in our communities, in our groups, depending on what kind of community group you're a part of, right? There might be catalytic events that are happening within these organizations and communities that are rattling. I think of it like stirring the hornet's nest, right? As people are learning to express themselves, they're creating alchemic chemical reactions within people viscerally, right? So people that are willing to be vulnerable and to just share where they're at is creating momentum in the field of consciousness of humanity, that's activating, right? So it's either pissing people off by what you're saying, or it's invoking compassion, right? It's evoking opinions about things, because this is Gemini. Gemini is like wants to assimilate data and information and knowledge and have conversations, because they're learning, they're curious. They want to see what other humans do and how other humans are responding to certain events, and then how should they respond, right? How should I be responding to this, right? This is like trying on different hats, very much Gemini. I'm almost seeing like the Fool and the Tarot card, right? It's often a new adventure of thinking, of processing data information. And then you got to feel it, right? So we have all this mind chatter that's going on, all these thoughts. And again, I always talk about going through a filtration system. Well, right now, the thoughts are being grounded down into the body. How do I feel about what I just thought about, right? So thinking of this certain line of thinking or this certain way, how does that feel in my body? How is that landing for me in this emotional nature, this emotional state? How are these thoughts literally creating chemical reactions in my body, in which I call feelings, right? Activating my hormones and doing different things, again, based on what I'm thinking. So this might be a very tender time today and tomorrow while the moon is ingressed into Cancer. You got to feel your feels, and you got to think about what you're thinking. And then when you think a thought, how does that feel in your body? So let's take a look at the chart really quick and see where we are astrologically. Because again, I like to look at the symbols. Again, the symbols tell them a story themselves about the energy, about what's going on. And so we can see here today's May 28th. I have this set for Greenwich Village time, which is in the Northern Hemisphere in the United States. And so we can see too that the moon just ingressed to Cancer is at 0 degrees right now. So it just came off of this Gemini party, if you will. And so now it's moving into this energy with where it's going to be now trining the North Node in Pisces. So you might feel yourself, again, the need to rest, to nurture yourself, take care of yourself. Again, there might be some emotions that have been triggered because of all this energy in Gemini, a lot of thoughts revealed, even your own inner thinking, your own inner gnosis about what's going on in your reality might have been triggering you and causing an emotional reaction, right? So we have been talking about the for those that are following this 30-day astrological conversation, we've been talking about the Aubrey Marcus podcast and how that's triggering a lot of people, right? Especially in the spiritual community, if you follow that particular content creator. And so, and I'm just witnessing, right? Because I'm not affected by either way. What I was affected by, I've been able to process and handle. It brought up the energies of jealousy within me, of why, maybe polyamory can be toxic if people are having to face the shadow of jealousy from the other. So I did a talk about that, and you can check out the channel for that. It's called, I forgot the name of it, but the title has jealousy in it, so you guys can see that conversation. And again, just continuing the flow of how by people opening up their throat chakra, sharing their truth, talking Gemini, is creating an alchemic, catalytic momentum within the collective energies Aquarius, right? It's like sending shockwaves out. I'm seeing vibrations that are like sending shockwaves to people all over the world, right? But it's okay. So I always like to ask, what's right about this? How is this happening for us, right? Because with Pluto, something's got to change. The conversation is igniting change within our electrical systems, within our bioelectrical fields, within the way we interact with groups, organizations, each other, right? Again, the hive mind, these are all Aquarian terms. Future technology, we're starting to see all kinds of dialogue about AI. We have been seeing that, but there's just, conversations about how things are changing, because we know Pluto's transformation is like, what are we transforming into? Well, it's going to be based on our frequency, which we also know is Gemini and Aquarius air, right? I would say Libra, right? The balance, right? How are we harmonized? Harmony is also Libra. Are we harmonizing our own fields? Are we harmonizing our nervous system, our electrical impulses, right? I'm thinking of Dr. Joe Dispenza, when he leads his workshops, he talks about how he's seeing mass groups of people heal because they get into these different states in consciousness, right? Different brainwave states, which I see as electrical, right? Neural pathways, that when you get into a certain field, right, you get into this theta state where that's the programmable state of where all of our unconscious programs are lingering. And if you're willing to go there and change the program, that's what's happening on a collective level right now. We're changing the program. And I even see too, even the whole human design program is being changed and upgraded, right? So on this North Node exploration too with Virgo, it's about exploring the body. It's about exploring healthcare practices that get us more into these harmonic states within our bodies. Literally our hormones, right? It's balancing, I'm thinking moan, which is like sound, and hor, which is like hour, orrery, Oris, which represents hour, from what I've gathered from the zodiacal wheel, when you're setting the archetypes of the Osiris, Isis, Horus energy, right? Horus is hour, which goes back to time, right? So it's all talking about self, these archetypes, these gods outside of us, these pantheon beings that are just representations of us. They're not anything to be looked at outside of you, other than what is the story being told about these gods, which are you, goddesses, which are you. And so, again, that's the periphery for this channel comes from Lives in Astrology, all is self. And so if you resonate with that unity consciousness, that oneness field, that willingness to look at your projections as something that's part of you, that's being brought up to be looked at, that might not be comfortable to be looked at, but it's necessary. There's a lot of healing. This is also Cancer. Also probably related to fourth house matters, things we learned from the family, right? Ways of engaging with other family members and relationships we learned from early childhood between the ages what of 0 and 7. That's when, from what I understand, that most kids between the ages of 0 and 7 are in that theta state. And then that's why, and then so that's the programmable state, right? So the programs that are running between the ages of 0 and 7 in childhood that are no longer valid programs because we're learning new data, new information that's pushing away these old programs, these old awarenesses. And so I'm sorry guys, I thought I turned my phone off and something's, I apologize, you can hear my phone in the background. Communication, see incoming messages. My ringer's never on, so that must be important. I need to look at that. Anyway, I digress. Coming back. So yeah, there might have been early learnings, early programs learned from childhoods that were like, okay, we're ready to release it. We're ready to alchemize it. Pluto, we're ready to transform it. And we got to have the courage to look at these things, right? Because you see also Venus, which is our love, money, values, how we value ourselves, how we see ourselves, is coming up to conjunct Chiron. They're within a 4-degree orb of each other. And I still feel that energy. They're starting to, merge energies together, if you will. So this could be a lot of healing, a healing opportunity, really, if you're willing to look at these things, because it's going to be squaring the moon. So Aries, where it was sextiling Gemini, the moon in Gemini, which is more of an opportunity flow, right? We consider that an easy aspect or a harmonious aspect. Now that the moon is going to be ingressing into Cancer, that's going to be more of a challenging aspect there. That's where the square is coming in. So there's squares or like 90-degree angles where you need to change something, right? Something needs to shift. And I'm thinking of like the Mandelbrot, and the Mandelbrot's always moving and changing, and when it gets to a certain dimension, then it changes forms. That changing form, that has to change form from a square to a circle, that has to happen through the squares, right? So something needs to change. And so when we look at, well, what's changing, we look to see where the moon is transiting, which is transiting through, this is how I'm perceiving it anyway, it's transiting through Cancer, and it's asking us to change something about how we see ourselves, Venus, how we love ourselves, how we've been projecting ourselves, wounds of the inner child. Were you taught not to love yourself? I'm even thinking too of like harsh language coming from the parental figures, whether whoever you grew up with, whoever raised you, whatever situation you were in. I'm hearing of like language programming that maybe you heard that as a child you thought it was all about you, right? Because in Aries it's all about the id, the me, my, I, the I am, right? So as kids we all think it's all about us. And I know this too because I've heard a lot of people, and myself included, coming from divorced family. There's that inner wound child part of you that thinks that something that you did, there was something wrong with you that created that rift in their partnership, right? Because again, Aries brings it all back to self, right? Because that's just where it is in its maturation phase. So where have these old maybe stories, words you heard in early childhood, um, where has that affected your psyche, and you have been carrying that language, that programming? Maybe your mom or dad had a bad day, right? And you overheard them say something that you took personally, it affected you, and then you've been carrying those wounds of the child this whole time into adulthood. When it's something as simple as an apology of your parent going, "Oh, honey, I didn't mean that. I was just having a bad day. Please don't let that program keep running into your psyche. I didn't mean it," right? So this is the work right now, right? And this is where, to me, the key with this beautiful trine happening, the key and the medicine of this transit right now, as we're entering March 28th, is the medicine of forgiveness. Can you forgive your parents? See maybe their wounding as inner child, perceive them as children who also probably heard these these thought forms, the language, the words that impacted them, right? That made them feel less worthy, that they took that to heart, they took that personally, and then it became part of their own inner dialogue and program as their own language, their own mind. And so they're mistaking these maybe offhanded comments from the parents as something they're telling themselves, right? Because I've seen this even in my own psychology, and again, being a bartender for 25 years, I've listened to the psychology of people talking, right? And sharing their childhood wounds. And there's a lot of commonality. There's a lot of common stories that I've been listening to for the past 25 years as people get into these vulnerable states, right? The alchemy, they go into these plutonic states through the medicine of alcohol, right? And then they start sharing their stories. I've been gathering these stories within myself for many, many years, because I'm here to work with collective energies to see where are we all commonly connected. And right now, what wants to come through is where have we all been commonly connected through our wounds, through our perceptions, through the way we've been taught to think and perceive reality and perceive this dimension, and what's ready to be alchemized and transformed, Pluto, and shifted. But the work is you got to feel it. You got to feel the injury of the words and then alchemize it, maybe upgrade it. And again, this is why I like to look at studying the language and the root of words, because if these words that were at one point doing damage to my psyche because I had taken it personally and not realizing, my mom just had a bad day or a bad life or a bad situation, and I was in the womb, and I inherited some of these thought forms because we're still unfolding with really how genetics works, right? And genetic modification and how we get these inheritances, DNA constructs, and how they manifest once you become, your adult human self. And so again, these are all things for exploration and conversations to be looking at during Gemini season. And over the next few days, while the moon's ingressed into Cancer, guys, I'm going to stop share here. Just give yourself some grace. Don't take things personally if you can. Just allow yourself to be in the feels of things, if you will. This is the time where, powerful thoughts may be emerging, and powerful insights into possibly past childhood wounds. Again, programming from mom and dad, or from those who were in authority, who helped raise you, and their words, their language that is maybe still running through your system. And are you ready to upgrade that language and that feeling that is invoked when you speak these words, these spell casting, these vibrations, verbs, verberations that are creating this reality timeline, this construct? And so taking command of the ship, taking command of the language, taking command of your emotions. I'm not trying to say to control them, but just know that we all have emotions, and then catch it when you're feeling it. If you feel the energy of frustration or anger or angry thoughts, right? Pay attention. Pay attention, because these are things that have probably been running in the unconscious realm, Pisces, for so long. And with this trine happening right now, while the moon is ingressing into Cancer, is an opportunity to look at these things and not be so triggered by it. It's an opportunity. Again, it's a harmonious aspect with this trine to do the deep work of forgiveness, to alchemize through the medicine of forgiveness. Forgive them, for they know not what they do. Forgive myself, for I didn't know what I was doing. And then be willing to create a whole new story based on a whole new emotional grid point, from a perspective of healing, of forgiveness, right? If your parents' inner child, that they were wounded, and so can you look at them in their innocence, right? And it's just going to help you. Again, I feel like we're making all this up anyway. We're telling stories about our reality. So be willing to tell a new, more harmonic story about this experience, so that we can all feel better about all the shit that we went through childhood, and all the early programming that we all went through. None of us got exempt from these programs, right? But they're all coming up to be revealed right now in this hive mind, Plutonian, Aquarius. Like, we got to change these things, right? We got to change the word, the language, the program, because we're ready to evolve past all this, past the stories. And I'm just going to keep it neutral, okay? So anyway, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for having this cosmic conversation. I believe it is day 8 now that I'm thinking about it. But yeah, check out the previous. And we're exploring cosmology and astrology through the lens of Gemini season. We're here to talk about things, maybe in a new way. And the language of astrology just really wants to be shown right now because Aquarius rules astrology. If you study the archetypes of astrology, so astrology is really a hot topic right now. And perhaps if you're joining in the channel and your resonant vibrational match to this channel, we look at it from just a little bit of a different lens. Again, we look at it from all as self, always folding these stories back into ourselves so we can create and craft new stories of our reality. But it requires taking ownership, and it requires really just allowing yourself to own the parts of yourself that have been dividing and fractaling off yourselves. So anyway, that's what wants to come through today. Thank you guys so much for being here. Thank you for being part of the conversation. And again, join tomorrow. I'm not sure. I still have friends in town that are visiting from Kentucky, so I'm kind of flowing with the time, but I will be here. So just keep tuned on the channel for the live. I'm doing this live every transmission because life's happening live, and it just feels good to be in this flow with you guys and to be expressing in this way. It feels organic and natural and important for those of us that are wanting to have these conversations with astrology about ourselves, about our communities, how we can upgrade this whole thing. And so this is helping all of us. The intention is to be the best version of ourselves, and whatever that looks like for you, using the language of astrology. And so again, thank you for being here. So much love to you guys. Enjoy your afternoon and enjoy this moon in Cancer. Allow yourself to feel it. We got to feel it to heal it, and then re-alchemize it through our thoughts. Use the medicine of forgiveness and allow yourself to just see your parents or the people that were the authority figures in your life in maybe a new light. Give them some grace, some compassion. It helps. It's helped me. So just wanted to offer that.